welcome. Thanks so much. Again, Mel Babik with Kittitas Conservation Trust. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about Gold Creek restoration. Again, river mouth 2 to 3. So this, we're requesting just a cost increase. We were successful in 2023. The project number is 1220, but because I will demonstrate, we are lacking about $500,000. So that's what I came here today to ask for, that cost increase of a previous grant for the upper river mouth 2 to 3 on this map. And for those that have been under a rock and know nothing about Gold Creek, I'll start conveying. Right, Tom? Bear with me. The Gold Creek's up in,
We'll have to meet again tomorrow.
I'm so sorry. Up in the upper headwaters of Kittitas in Myra 39, Gold Creek. It's a really important headwater tributary for a very genetically distinct population of bull trout. It hosts spawning and rearing habitat. But it was always a super important area since time immemorial. Our first people utilized this site. Fast forward through time, 1917, we had Kittitas Dam go in, which blocked anadromy to Gold Creek Valley. In time a little bit more, the 1950s, we started to see a lot of resource extraction in the form of lumber being taken out of Gold Creek Valley. The 70s and 80s, we saw resource extraction in the form of gravel taken out of the valley for the expansion of I-90. And I'm going to walk you through some of these historic photos from 1942. What I want you to take note, Gold Creek is a big, skinny little channel, lots of great riparian vegetation up to the creek banks. It's meandering, there's side channel connection. It's a historical forested wetland complex. Fast forward to 54, we're starting to see logging impacts. 75, we see that creek starting to over widen. It's starting to unravel because it doesn't have those riparian buffers holding it, shading the creek. And we also see Gold Creek ponds starting to form as the gravel's taken to develop our I-90 corridor. The pond filled in with groundwater, and in the 1980s, this is pretty much what you see today, a really over-widened channel that kind of flops around with high flows. That channel's 90% wider than it was historically, and over 750,000 cubic yards of material have been extracted from the valley and again returned with groundwater. So Gold Creek Pond, as many of you already know, is pulling water away from the creek. Our limiting factors for this genetically distinct population of bull trout include this over-widened channel, a lack of habitat complexity. Katie Funenstein, she did a lot of wood surveys last year, found there's not a lot of wood in this reach. It's single thread, and it slops around with different high flow events. It's disconnected from its historic floodplain. And the big kicker is it seasonally dewaters. We have our crew of restoration folks out there always. Thank you for all of you that do Gold Creek salvage. But they're out there with their dip nets. They're our heroes of the story, trying to salvage fish as the pools drop out in a matter of days. So again, simplified, very wide and disconnected. But again, that annual dewatering is the kicker here. These photos are from 2022. We're over 2 miles with dewatered. It dewaters from July, sometimes comes back in September. Last year, the water didn't reconnect until after Halloween. So it's quite a drought year for these fish. This is the exact same place in July, August, and October, showing how the pools just drop out rather quickly, total dewatered in the summertime, and then they return. So this leaves both adults and juveniles vulnerable to predation as well as desiccation. Again, Gold Creek Pond is 80% of the floodplain width. It's sucking water out of the channel. What we want to do is restore this whole area, 2.5 miles of in-stream restoration, and we want to restore this natural forested wetland complex. We want it to look like the picture on the right. And this is a graph of our red counts from 1984 to 2004. You can see it's pretty variable over time, but in recent history, it's been quite low. Last year, our biologist only found 5 reds, and WFW estimates about 50 adult spawners left in this population, which is unfortunately a stronghold in the upper Yakima Basin, but we need to get these numbers up. 4 recovery plans speak to this effort, directly calling out immediate action. We have the Yakima Basin 10-year integrated plan. We have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Bull Trout Implementation Plan, the BOR's Bull Trout Enhancement Plan, and then, of course, the Yakima Bull Trout Action Plan. They talk about things like narrowing that overwidened channel, in-stream and floodplain habitat restoration, restoring the groundwater hydrology, reconfiguring both Helly's Pond and Gold Creek Pond so they're not siphoning out the water. And also support for this project is the Yakima Basin Fish and Wildlife Recovery Tag Project List. This fits under number 23, Bull Trout Stranding and Passage. And I've circled the Gold Creek actions there in red. The Bull Trout Working Group also lists Gold Creek restoration as a priority. They are quite generous in that they always elevate the need for Gold Creek restoration and recommend funding from the integrated plan each year to keep supporting our work. The goal of the whole overall project is to improve spawning and rearing habitat for this genetically distinct population of bull trout. How we're going to do that? We want to install 141 ELJs, large wood structures. We want to excavate 1.4 miles of side channels to connect the floodplain with the creek. We want to fill in about 30 acres of old legacy gravel borrow pits to reduce the siphoning effect of groundwater away from the creek, removing the levees around those pits, and install, and I counted, over 118,000 native plants is in the restoration designs for this area. So a large number of restoration riparian plantings. So for this project, that was the whole overall Gold Creek Valley restoration. But for this cost increase, now I'm funneling down to what we're asking for, River Mile 2 to 3, same goal, improving spawning and rearing habitats. But for this project specifically, we'd be installing 28 large wood structures with helicopters in that 1 mile of upper reach, River Mile 2 to 3. What we have already, we have full designs complete. We have a basis of design report complete. We have our strategic plan complete. We're working through our permits. We've fortunately been through our NEPAs, SEPAs. We've been through Army Corps. We've got exemptions from a lot of our county permits. So we only have a couple other permits that we're working through right now. And we're working through our landowner agreements. So this will be a shovel-ready project as soon as our in-water work window of July of 2026. Now I want to show you a couple pictures, aerial imagery, and then I'll follow with our designs for this stretch of River Mile 2 to 3, that 1 mile reach. You can see it's quite wide, still in the upper reach. It does hold water all year round, but it is quite wide and it's lacking habitat complexity. We want to add a lot of ELJs, and then the checker marks there is supplementing existing large woody material. Again, another shot of just an overwide channel lacking riparian vegetation. We'll be narrowing that up with some 28 engineered log jams. And our last picture, you see some wood accumulation here, but we still are lacking some full habitat, so we want to add a lot more to that reach. So a lot of work has been invested. So many of you, probably everyone in this room, has invested in Gold Creek to this point. $2.3 million has been invested since 2012 already, getting us through all of our studies, understanding the problems, doing our assessments, getting our designs ready, permitting. So we've done a lot of work, again, $2.3 million of investments. And we're there. So I actually have funding for River Mile 0.5 to 3 fully funded, and I have about $2 million of work for the pond. Now you're wondering, why am I coming to you with a cost request for $500,000 increase, right? If I have this money. Well, unfortunately, the blue sections here, the BOR Water Smart and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service IIJA funding has been federally frozen, even though it's under contract. So even though, yes, technically we have full funding for all the in-stream work, $4.2 million, half of that is frozen right now. We're really hopeful that it's going to come back any day. But we have to keep moving this project along so we're ready to implement in 2026. So triage is happening, which is why I'm requesting these funds. My triage plan A, I've got a lot of plans here, bear with me. But Plan A, all the funding comes back, and this cost increase, we don't need anymore, and we can return those funds, right? We, as I said, we're fully funded for all in-stream work with $2 million for the pond. So best case scenario, we don't need these funds. Worst case scenario, Plan B is they stay frozen, they're not available, they go away. We don't have enough money to do even 1 mile of stream restoration. So our priority mile is River Mile 1 to 2, because that's where all of the homes, residential homes, are located. Typically in a system, you work downstream to upstream or upstream to downstream. We're gonna work in the middle first, and you might be like, what the heck? Why are we doing that? Well, it's because of those homes, right? We need to show for FEMA compliance, we need to show a no rise analysis. So we need to get water away from those homes. So we're opening up those side channels on the western floodplain to really relieve that buffer for the community. We're required. It's also an initiation point of the dewatering. So we want to work in River Mile 1 to 2 first. So what that means is we would be taking all of our funding we have from 0.5 to 1 and 2 to 3, and then re-scoping that to 1 to 2. And we're $500,000 short if we have to do that. You can see here, the total is 6.9 million, but the total cost for our engineered estimates are 7.38. So we are short about 500,000. And why this would be so good for the community, here you can see how close these homes are right adjacent to Gold Creek, right? Their banks are eroding. Some have put up riprap trying to protect their banks and their cabins, but really opening up those floodplain would divert flows away from those community and buffer flood events. It would also provide climate change resiliency by restoring natural processes and creating a more natural and robust system in the face of climate change. Also, it would help restore groundwater, which is really important with our Yakima Nation, restoring those treaty trust resources. There's a conflict in this system where Yakima Nation, of course, has a memorial water right, and I listed the number there if you'd like to check it out. So they have our senior water right for this creek that goes dry. But the community keeps taking water all year round, even though they have a junior water right. So if we're able to provide more aquifer recharging, more groundwater, hopefully we're able to lessen those impacts with the community and the tribe a little bit. Also with recreation, none of our surfboard or any of our federal funding is going to go towards restoration, but it is a strong component of the whole project. We're going to work closely with Forest Service as landowners of Gold Creek Pond, as well as Mountain Sound Greenway, to replace this aging infrastructure. You can see there's holes, it's slanted. It is not ADA compliant or safe at this point. So there's definitely going to be plans in the future to have a more diverse experience for our recreators. Gold Creek Pond is pretty beautiful, but it's just one big deep pit at this point. We want recreators to experience a more diverse, wetland, complex habitat. And lastly, we want to restore this area so it looks less like the top photo, which is simplified, over-widened, quite dry. We want to add complexity with pool habitat, hopefully restoring in-stream flow for our pool trout. And as you've seen this slide before, so many of you in this room and on the call, thank you, have supported this project. So a huge thank you for that and keeping up our work. We're keep charging ahead with Gold Creek. Now we take questions at this time.
Thank you, Mel. We got one hand raised on Zoom. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. I wanted to make sure I understood this. So in this River Mile 2 to 3, so are you proposing that, I guess I'm confused, the money could go toward 1 to 2 or 2 to 3?
Well, it really depends on the strategy of how funding comes back online. Hopefully both pots, the Bureau, I'm sorry I didn't describe this well. The Bureau money funded River Mile 2 to 3, and the IIJA money funded 0.5 to 2, right? So if one of those comes back online, say the IIJA money comes back online, then we're still going to ask for a cost increase for the Bureau, for the Bureau funds that were lost in River Mile 2 to 3. If neither of those come back online, we'd be rescoping the 22-12-20 grant, sorry, 23-12-20 grant, and we'd be pulling that down to River Mile 1 to 2.
Okay, and you said somewhere in there you said that this reach stays watered up year round. Am I understanding that correctly?
The 2 to 3 does.
The 1 to 2 dries out?
Yes, 0.5 to 2 actually goes bone dry, but 2 to 3 usually maintains water.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to think of this because, you know, I think one of those probably fits our priority project or focus project, whatever it's called, and the other one probably doesn't. That might be something we have to wrestle with over, you know, throughout this process.
Mhm. Other questions?
And the original scope was the 2 to 3, which does not de-water, so if Sean's correct, and it'll be good to revisit that language. I can't, we'd have to go back and look, but I think it would not have then have gotten that 10-point boost, but it still competed. If you move down, then you might boost it above and beyond the original project based on that dewatering emphasis in the folks. So yeah, it would affect the scoring and the discussions come July, August. It doesn't affect the overall eligibility or the fact that the funded portion is already in place.
And not to get too far in the weeds, I didn't want to drag us there, but I can't resist. We looked at doing a cost increase of the 24 grant that we were successful on, but we're really hoping maybe TI comes forward. So that's why we could do a cost increase of Rivermount 1 to 2 or a cost increase of 2 to 3. So we grappled with that, but we already have a request for 1 to 2 that are still pending. So that's why we chose to do the 2 to 3 at this time.
And just based on what we've heard in the last day or two, not the news you want to hear. I am not seeing a strategy likely where Gold Creek gets funding in July from, it's a little outside the highest number on the table. It could be a project that's higher up, state monies falls through, but right now, the probability of that has dropped since we talked 2 months ago, based on the legislature's actions.
I know it's next on the list, but it is high for both the House. and
Unfortunately, it's like a $10 million project between it, so,
expensive.
yeah.
I
There
guess
is
I do
also-
have another question. I guess I've not been following the details of the in-stream work too much, but those cost estimates, which I'm assuming are a little bit outdated anyway, those kind of blew me away in terms of what this is going to cost. Can you just is there a short version of why it's $7 million for River Mile 1 to 2 and 3.5 for 2 to 3? Those I'm just not used to numbers in that ballpark.
Yeah, we have all of the cost estimates and the written out according to like the wood specs, the materials, operations, oversight, and I can provide that if that's helpful. But those were the engineered estimates from Natural Systems Design, our contractor, and they shouldn't be too far outdated, although by 2026 perhaps. Hopefully, someone who bids on this project, we're hoping to go to bid this August. Hopefully, engineered estimates are often a little high. And there might be some cost savings because we're trying to do a thinning of KCT property for a lot of the source wood. So that would be a good cost savings. We're also working with Forest Service, WSDOT. You guys are donating a ton of the I-90 expansion wood. So we could find some cost savings there, but those were the estimates given.
Just for some calibration, like, are you familiar with projects on a stream this small that spends more than $1 million or a couple $1 million per mile?
Are you asking for another? Restate that question, please, Scott or Sean.
I guess I'm sort of shocked at how high the cost estimate is. It's a fairly small stream. I'm just trying to understand what's driving it. Is it just, I guess I'm just sort of shocked by the size of the number for a stream of this size.
Yeah,
and looking
it's
like, is this in the norm, do you think, for some reason?
Yeah, it's for sure expensive. I mean, wood cost, and Kelsey just mentioned, I don't know if you heard, this 2 to 3 is helicopter wood placement, so we don't have to go in with equipment. But yeah, mobilization and wood cost, it is quite expensive. Did you want to add?
And a significant excavation of that side channel network on the far side, which is tough to mobilize to, so it's not a simple project.
And moving the fill, right? We have, I guess I didn't put too many of the designs in this upper reach, but some of that River Mile 1 to 2, we are taking fill out of the side channel habitat and then creating fill islands.
I think in the 2 to 3, all the engineered log jams are very engineered for the high flows and shear velocities. Cause I think that's my comment on the designs. It's like, oh, why are we chaining and doing all this stuff to this? It's like, okay. You look at it when there's no water, but then you go back in the winter and there's a lot of water.
It's a high velocity stream with a lot of very expensive cabins downstream. So we're doing boulder collars. We're not doing any post or piled. Again, it's all helicopter built, but we do have to do those boulder collars. So manufacturing those. Yeah, happy to support give you a detailed breakdown of our cost estimates.
And the 2 to 3 budget is in the proposal that was approved by you guys and for most of you in 2023. And you guys have been through that. The new piece is the 1 to 2 budget. And that will be good to add to the materials just as a reference as a discussion. If you have to have that intimate attachment, you could throw in prison with the cost increase info.
Yeah, and those were funded under the 24. So you've all seen those budget cost estimates as well. It's all in Prism, but I can put it all in one place.
Well, the 2 to 3 is very, very expensive. And then the other one, the 1 to 2, it's double that. Like, is it twice as much material or something? I can't get my head around $7 million in 1 mile of stream.
Yeah, so that was the side channel excavation that Alex was talking about. We have to open up 1.4 miles of side channel habitat on the western floodplain. And we're trucking that material. Let me get my numbers right. I think it's 16,000 cubic yards of material. We're going down to Gold Creek Pond to start filling it because we need to put those spoils somewhere. The rest of it's going in the channel and Helly's Pond. So we're trying to narrow that up with fill and wood and plants.
Would it be cheaper to buy a few of these houses instead of doing such expensive log jams?
It wouldn't fix the issue of the in-stream habitat.
If you had more room to play around, would it reduce the cost?
No, we really want to narrow that scope and we do want to connect the floodplains. There was a parcel for sale recently. We tried to acquire it. I can't remember. I think it sold for over $1 million and it was 8 acres, but 4 of which were in Gold Creek. So the property was quite expensive, but it wouldn't suit the habitat value. Like we really need to narrow that up and create more habitat.
Following up, how many homes are we talking about,
Yeah, so
or cabins?
there's 5 cabins right along the river and the rest of those circles, which I can get back to. There's a whole ton of circles that are owned by the Ski Tour Maintenance Association. And so they own the interstitial space. Sorry, folks. There we go. So you can see all of these circles down here. This is the Ski Tour Valley. And then we have a couple big parcels here. That was that 8-acre parcel I just mentioned. Folks, I'm sorry online, you can't see it. It's just west of the circles. And then we have Forterra owns a couple parcels in there. And then here's another private one just north of Gold Creek Pond. And there's 2 up there.
And for clarity, the big chunk of circles and the thing that's shaped like a vase. The first big chunk of circles. That's the oh, I'm having a momentary brain, but those are not developed. Ski Tour is the next set to the right of circles. And those circles, at least half of them have a cabin on them. So it's probably 30 or 40 total.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I misspoke. You're right.
Because actually that one that has all the circles on it. That, if it comes up for sale, I hope we can buy tomorrow because that's undeveloped, but has all those subdivided circles. And that's the one with the big drain network under it that is draining water from all those potential development sites to Gold Creek Pond.
And it just recently sold in the last few years. So missed opportunity there.
Maybe we have a model.
Yeah. like the way you think it.
We don't need a model to say. it. Okay.
Yeah, we need balance, we need.
No. To say that one parcel on Gold Creek
That would
would be a
still
priority,
still
that'd be a
have-
priority tomorrow. Your model's awesome for. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else waiting to jump in?
Maybe it doesn't affect this particular thing, but, have the issues with the landowners been resolved? It seems like there was some pretty strong pushback to start with, but it seems like
Yeah.
the latest I've heard it's subsiding.
That's a great question. Yeah, this project started in 2012. So Mitch has pushed and groomed this project for the last 13 years, and there's been ups and downs for sure with these landowners. I feel we're at a great spot now. They gave us an MOU a couple of months ago. It's in our court. Our attorney's looking over it, but they are a strong proponent of the interim restoration. Their only concerns are at this point is the use of Chickaman Peak Road because they have really old infrastructure, water going underneath the road. And they were concerned about our dump trucks squashing their pipes and creating leaks everywhere. But really, that's their main concern, and access, maintaining that locked gate, making sure public's not going in anywhere they shouldn't be. But they gave us a really reasonable MOU. So we're working through that with our attorney now, making sure it's in legalese, working through negotiations with Forterra. And then, as I mentioned, those other 5 landowners, we have to get individual landowner agreements from them, even though many of them are in ski tour. We're also working directly on their property, so we'll need those. But I think we're over that hump. There's still gonna be rocks and bumps. That one property that sold last year, that landowner is extremely busy, but he seems to be a proponent of the project. But I need to sit down with him and answer all his questions. It's just hard getting time.
Does that MOU address support or opposition or differing opinions about the pond fill, or is that a second bridge to be crossed when the time comes?
I think that ship has sailed. Honestly, they're giving permission for us to do the restoration work. So there's still some people that don't want to have this pond filled, to be really honest. They just, they don't want that pond filled, but that's on Forterra property. And we're working through negotiations with Forterra. So I think we'll get there.
The handle.
Oh, Sean.
Yeah, I did have another question for you, Mel. So if you didn't get this money and the Bureau money falls through, like, how are you thinking about the strategy? Well, how are you thinking about moving forward if we have a, declining funding environment? Starting with just the ask here, if you didn't have that, would you be looking at doing the project, but just, pulling out a few log jams or something to get down to cost? And then kind of longer term, if there's a retraction in sort of the funding environment, state and federal, like, what do you think KCT will do in that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sean. We don't want to cut out log jams because our whole model, right? We start picking out things, it could really collapse our model. So we want to build what we have. We'll find efficiencies where we can. As I mentioned, we have Swamp Lake Forest that needs some thinning. We can use a lot of that wood. We've got partners with wood. Blue Fern is working forward right now in the city of Roslyn. Or Clallam, they're starting to do some thinning, so we can find efficiencies. But it would be more phasing, and that'd be more mobilization, and that would be a bummer. But instead of doing River Mile 1 to 2, if we don't get this $500,000 cost increase, maybe it'd be 1 to 1.8, right? We would just have to prioritize and just kind of shrink our footprint, but we'll keep moving forward. It would just be more phases than what we wanted.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Jen, did you have something? I just saw you were unmuted.
I don't think I was unmuted. I I guess I'm struggling with some of the same questions that Sean was asking. I'm really thinking about certainty of success, and I guess the thing that's hard is it's hard to know what we're really scoring. You know, I mean, typically we wouldn't rescore something that we've fairly recently scored, but it feels like we don't know with very good certainty where you plan to put this extra 500. So I think it's hard to score from that regard, I guess.
The TI project was written for what length? Was it covering all 3 sections or
No.
just 2 to 3? or-
0.5 to 2. Yeah, so that's why we went for 2 to 3, hoping that IIJA is gonna come back online, because I know our Fish and Wildlife Service partners are fighting pretty hard for that. Euro seems a little less certain, and this is just kind of my gut feeling, right? We haven't had a lot of response from our Bureau partners, our grant manager. So I'm hoping, I'm pretty optimistic that IIJ funding is gonna come back online. And that's why I put this in River Mile 2 and 3. So I guess what I'm asking for is keep it in 2 to 3, review it as a 2 to 3 project. That we would, right now, we have our Bureau $2.2 million frozen.
Right. But there's a big gap between 500 and 2.2 million. So I guess how do we fill that gap?
Yeah, we keep applying for funds. So I'm working with Katie right now. We're looking at different funding sources than we typically go after. We're looking at a wetland grant right now. So we're transitioning our brains from fish to more wetland species. And yeah, we're just gonna keep writing grants until we fund this. And we can't really do it with the helicopter work, but like I said, piecing it together and trying to phase it more than what we want. Originally, we said, gosh, maybe 1 or 2 phases of the in-stream work. And as things get harder, it may just be more phases and more mobilization, which isn't ideal, but it's still doing good priority work.
Thanks for that, Jen. I figured out why it looked like you were muted. It just kind of cuts off at the bottom. But glad you had those comments. Anyway. Anybody else? We're pretty unlikely to go up here for site tours, I imagine.
Yeah,
We didn't do last year.
no, the snow up there's a little iffy.
Yeah.
There's still snow on the road right now. It is melting off, but
Okay, well then, any questions about what we'd like to see at site tours? Is there anything that possibly we could get with drone footage that we haven't had in the past?
yeah, I definitely have a lot of drone footage. I guess it's up to you all. If you want me to present again on a cost increase, happy to share more photos, drone imagery, go through some cost estimates. I'm happy to dig deeper, but you guys have seen all that already, so I don't want to take up too much time.
I haven't, I'm brand new this year, so.
Thank God somebody's not like so sick of hearing Gold Creek Pond. I would be happy to show you all the stuff.
There's an easy way to fix it, but it'd be a head cut probably for about 5 miles.
Yeah, I have said, why not? Because that creek has got so much deposition, it's parts of the floodplain are cut off, but it's not our classic in size. So when we're talking about disconnected from flood, it is filled up with rock to raise it above the groundwater. That's a different discussion.
We can talk possibly a PowerPoint with drone footage that I could just share with the new folks on the committees. Possibly we do it as a group.
Yeah, and this would be an essential one for what do you need to know? Whether it's about cost estimates or other things. Now that we know the puzzle, what do you need to know? Because if we do anything with the whole group, it should be really tailored and focused on the things that aren't already answered in previous reviews.
Updates on the grant situation, yeah, that'd be critical.
Well, we will at minimum be with you for Hutchinson, so we could bundle it with that. Some presentation perhaps at the Grange.
I'm sorry, presentation.
Perhaps at the Grange.
Oh, yeah.
Me thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Absolutely.
so updates to the grant situation
Mhm.
and anything else
Sounds maybe like some more specifics on the budget for 2 to 3, since that has never been reviewed as just 2 to 3.
Well, it was in the 23 grant.
But it's part of 0.5 to 2. I'm not 2 to 3. I misspoke. That's my fault. I meant 1 to 2.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Breaking that out from the TI, because it's different than the TI
Yeah.
budget or the.
I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Yep, 1 to 2.
Yeah, it helps when I say the right thing.
I was like, what are you talking about?
And it's Star Water. Finally came back to you. That's what all this.
Yeah, it was.
You feel like
Do-
you have,
We have some discussion at the field trip, unless somebody already knows, like, do we have bull trout spawning in this reach?
In 2 to 3, Craig,
Well, this is, I did that analysis I sent you. There's been 1 to 2 reds over the last 15 years in this reach. In general, all the spawning starts in 2 to 3 and up. 2 to 3 gets about 30% of spawning over the years, and most of the spawning except that is higher upstream. They'll spawn below the pond in years when access is an issue, but we're assuming those reds have really poor, if any, survival. So the real answer is spawning is from mile 2 upstream.
more questions?
feeling good?
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you, Mel, and. Okay. That is our 14th and last sponsor presentation for 2025. We will have site tours coming up in 2.5 weeks. And I'll be communicating with everybody shortly as soon as I have a solid schedule for all that. All these PowerPoints that you saw today, along with the ones from yesterday, will be available on our website, probably early next week. Or links to them, they'll be on YouTube. And any other parting thoughts, Alex, Bridget? Any parting thoughts from anyone else?
I do have one thing to share with Bob. I was texting our engineer about, he asked how long engineered log structures, different projects, right? Different engineered log structures, but I asked him about ours in 2 to 3. He said between 25 and 50 years.
Okay,
Just in case.
thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll cut you all loose. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your participation. This was really good surfboard presentations.